to infinity and beyond.
This is me. This is how I win.
Were you rushing or were you dragging? Answer!
You're a wizard, Harry.
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you.
No, I am your father.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
And here we go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back inside the film room. It's Zach Owens. It's Johnny Sobchak. We're here for another great episode. Johnny, my friend, how are you on this wonderful Monday evening?
Wonderful is a strong word, Zach.
On this Monday
I'm doing
evening.
Fine. I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
I'm good. We're getting started after a busy week of basically there was news other than what we're going to talk about, but the biggest news of last week was all the Disney Investor Day stuff. That could take up, I tweeted that we're going to have a 5-hour episode. That is not feasible because I don't feel like editing that. So unless we wanted to go just off the cuff, no edits podcast, but we're not going to do that. But we're going to break all that down as best as we can. And then we've got a review of Sound of Metal today, the latest Amazon. Well, I don't know if it's the latest, but it is an Amazon movie, Amazon original that's going to be hopefully an awards contender this year. But that's what we've got on schedule today. But yeah, we'll get to that later. So how are you, my friend?
Doing well. I'm excited to dig into everything. It was kind of a crazy week, as you said.
You had the fastest fingers on Twitter sharing everything.
The fastest. I'm trying, bro. It was kind of like I knew that was kind of upcoming, the Disney Investor Day, and I knew there'd probably be some pretty big stuff, but I don't think I was quite mentally or physically prepared for
the sheer volume.
The sheer volume, my friend, and just keeping up with everything. But it was fun. It was a little in a down movie year in a lot of ways. It was kind of nice to have, regardless of how you feel about Disney, it was kind of nice to have a period where we got to talk about some exciting things and things that we do have to look forward to.
And I feel like
a little something again for everyone.
Right. That's what I was going to say. You made the comment of no matter what you feel about Disney, but I feel like even if you're like the biggest like hater of the House of Mouse, like there was still something in there that got you excited. Like whether it was if you're no good on Star Wars or MCU, it's like, oh wait, an Alien TV series, like okay, that can get me excited. Mm-hmm. Like there with the fact that Disney just like owns so much now, like it could have been a National Geographic show or something like that could have been what piqued your interest. So I think that there was something for everyone there. So not a complete miss for anybody.
Yeah, I totally agree. A lot of cool things through a variety of even just mediums. I mean, they talked a lot about animation. They talked about superhero genre a lot, of course, with Marvel and Star Wars, which, coming off the Rise of Skywalker, which is a huge downturn, but also coming on top of Mandalorian season 2, which is a big, win for them so far, it seems. So yeah, I mean, I am very, I keep it real. I feel like most times, especially when we're talking about these big corporations that dominate everything that we watch and listen to.
Right.
And I think that it was just still, like I said, enjoyable and like fun to kind of see everyone talking about the same things and like seeing different takes and getting news that we already knew about. So it wasn't exactly news, but then also getting some surprises as well, which is always fun and exciting. And it was, I guess you could say it was kind of like the, it talked about more than Marvel, but it was kind of like the opposition to the DC fandom that we got, a few months ago now, which was another really exciting, occasion, and everyone, it was fun to just kind of see everyone excited and talking about something and getting new things, and kind of just looking towards the future, because right now it's a little on the grim side, especially with the movies the way it is. Yeah, so a good fun week, busy week, and a lot to talk about, of course.
But before we get into all that, we've got some stuff to cover. And off the top, the biggest thing is the fate of next week's episode is in the people's hands. Because if you've been following along on Twitter, we've been doing our holiday movie madness bracket. So we started off with 32 Christmas movies, holiday adjacent movies that are in this bracket. We're down to the final 4 at this point. So you can vote up until Wednesday on Twitter in the final 4, and then we'll have the championship matchup. We'll run that into Friday or Saturday, and then whichever movie emerges victorious will be the one that we review on next week's holiday-themed episode of the podcast. So right now, the possibilities are Home Alone, Klaus, the animated Grinch movie from 1966, and out of the Is It Really a Christmas Movie bracket, that region has given us Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. So this could go a lot of different directions. It could go old classics, it could go old animation, it could go new animation, or it just could go off to Hogwarts. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But be sure to go check us out at Inside Film Room. Vote for those while you can. And, it determines what happens on next week's podcast. So it's very high stakes. Johnny, do you have a preference?
Oh, this is tough. We were talking about this a little bit outside of the show, but I have just recently watched The Sorcerer's Stone, the first Harry Potter film, and Klaus, because it is, Christmas time. And so it'd be just convenient for one of those to win. Also,
Not to have to watch another extra movie.
Yeah, and also the Grinch animated film is quite short. It's not like full feature length. But I do love Home Alone, and I haven't seen that in probably a few years at least. That's not one that I kind of always go back to every year, so it'd be nice to catch up on that. So I don't have a horse in the race, I guess, but they're all good, and I think they're all worthy of being, coming out of the regions that they are. So yeah, I do love Klaus. I will say, watching that again recently, probably like a top 3 Christmas movie for me, maybe like top, it's really right up there, and it is so brand new. I know it's kind of wild to say, but I could definitely see myself watching that one every year from now until infinity. So
Well,
what about you? What about you, Zach?
Yeah, I ride or die for Home Alone. That's like my go-to. I watch it every Thanksgiving night, like to kick off the Christmas season. Like now that we're done with Thanksgiving, it's time to move on. We're watching Home Alone, and I got the 4K of it this year. So that was like even more exciting to watch it.
Yeah.
And I usually watch that, or at least the second one, at a later date during the season leading up to Christmas. But I have not seen Klaus, so podcast or not, bracket or not, I will be watching that. I just missed it last year and then didn't want to watch it like in August or something, like, not at Christmas time. So I will definitely be checking that one out. Harry Potter's a classic. Animated Grinch, I don't know. I mean, that's a classic. I haven't seen it in probably since like my childhood. Yeah. Like I've seen bits and pieces like when it's on TV this time of year, but never really like sit down and watch it. So I would love to talk about Home Alone, because I just think that's such like the epitome of Christmas, just murder. Well, not murder, but abuse, beating people up, children getting left behind, picking on your family members. So it's just like everything that you love about this season, this time of year.
Yeah.
But I would love to break that down. But I think no matter which way it goes, it's going to be good.
Yeah, I'm excited. So thanks again to everyone who's participated. It's been fun to watch it play out. And props to you, Zach, for putting it together. And that beautiful graphic that we've seen develop over the last week or so.
Yeah, that was a very long vetting process of us bouncing the ideas off each other in the group message with the other guys, the other Inside the Film Room crew, to decide on what movies make the cut, what ranking they'll be. So it's been a lengthy process, and it's nice to see it come to fruition now. But before we get into everything else, just a couple more questions. I know we kind of typically talk at this point about what else have we been watching? I know we're reviewing Sound of Metal this week, but for me personally, I've tried to use this time. I mean, it's getting down to crunch time at the end of the year here. I know, like you alluded to, it's been a down year. We all know that, but there's still plenty of movies to either watch that are coming up or to catch up on. So in the past week alone, I've watched Tenet finally, which comes out by the time you're listening to this, it'll be out on 4K and Blu-ray, all that stuff. So check out our review. We gave away a couple copies of that. Sound of Metal, of course, which we're reviewing today. I checked out Wolfwalkers, News of the World, and The Wolf of Snow Hollow, which we're also giving away a copy of on Twitter right now. So check that out as well. But out of those, I would say Sound of Metal was my favorite, and that's good because we'll be talking about it today. Tenet, we couldn't really dive too deep on it earlier because you had only seen it.
Yeah.
But I think that it was pretty much exactly what I was expecting as far as like, I think I liked it, but I was also incredibly confused by it. But I'd say Wolfwalker is definitely worth checking out. That's out now on Apple TV Plus. News of the World, hard pass. Did not care for that one.
Hard pass.
Hard pass. It's Tom Hanks is good in it, but it's very slow, it struggles with pacing.
Yeah.
And the fact that that's still trying to come out in theaters on Christmas Day when even like Wonder Woman, which is a huge theater draw, was like, maybe this isn't the best idea. Like, right. I don't think anybody's going to be racing to risk their health to go see News of the World.
Wow, I guess you just don't know anything about me at all to use that.
You had the whole theater booked out, so you'll be safe.
No, I definitely think that's kind of bizarre. Unfortunately, I think I missed my window to see News of the World, because we both had the same screener, I believe, which was like limited time. But it doesn't sound like I missed too much, so I guess I'll just catch that when I get a chance, if at all. But yeah, no, I think you honestly, I was kind of surprised. It seemed like you were a little bit higher on Tenet than even I was, which is
so the way that I ended up watching it, I was watching it and I was like, this looks cool, it feels cool, but I'm very confused. So I actually paused, which is like the greatest, like Christopher Nolan, this is exactly what he wants when you see his movies.
Yeah.
For him to just know that you're pausing and reading the Wikipedia summary of what you've watched so far. And then after that, I don't know if the last third is more like comprehensible, or if that was just like a benefit of reading the Wikipedia summary. But I definitely enjoyed it more from that point on. So I think it was about a 3.5 stars, but nowhere near like the Christopher Nolan that we all have hopefully come to expect.
Well, it's funny. The last thing I'll say about that is it is funny that you mentioned looking at the Wikipedia summary, because I think it might have been we were talking about it, but I went back and I did go to Wikipedia. I did read the entire plot from beginning to end. And I think it was the first time I'd done it since it came out, because it wasn't even, I don't know if it was even updated at that point. But I did read it, and I felt just as confused as I did when I watched it in September. So
I feel like it kind of just like during it all, I was like, okay, first of all, it's just, as we all know, hard enough to like hear it all with the mumbled, muffled voices. But then I was like, it at least helped me like clarify with some names, and then like stuff that I was like, I think this is what's happening, but I'm not sure. But then it like kind of helped confirm that.
Right.
So that was nice. But I mean, I don't think the reason it's a 3 or a 3.5 and nothing higher is because like I want to be able to grasp all that and know what I saw coming out of a movie versus having to like do extra homework to just get a basic understanding of.
I think a lot of people have complained in the past, like about, especially his more original films like Inception and Interstellar. They say, they're just so confusing. Like Inception's the most confusing movie ever. I think that movie is incredibly straightforward and simple. I think it explains everything really well. Maybe I think people, if anything, would complain on top of that it's just too much exposition. Like it explains so much. But this is an example of like, okay, I literally don't know what is going on or like how this world works, like what the rules are. So yeah, I think for me, a pretty frustrating movie, and maybe one I'll try to revisit at some point to see if my feelings change, because I have had my feelings change with his movies in the past on a couple occasions. But on to the next one. I think for him mostly, I'm just like excited, to see what he does next, whether that's at Warner Brothers or after this whole HBO Max kerfluffle, if he's going to run off to Disney or Sony or Universal or something.
A Christopher Nolan Disney movie. Sign me up.
Sign me up.
What else? What else have you been watching, my friend?
Okay, so a big one. I finally checked Gladiator off my list. Best Picture winner. From 2001 was when it won the award. And man, I had seen some of it, a good amount of it, if not all, when I was in like maybe middle school or earlier in high school. I had forgotten a lot of it. I did remember certain parts. But man, I don't know if you've seen it. Have you seen it, Zach?
I have not.
Okay. It's fantastic. It is. I think you would actually quite like it. It's pretty simple. It's like a little bit of a sports movie almost. And it's a great like revenge story. Russell Crowe is so good, and Joaquin Phoenix, that was like his first Oscar nomination, and he's incredible. There's just so many good quotes. The effects, I mean, in the production design, the sets are enormous, and they're just like everything's so detailed. And I got it on 4K for my birthday from my brother and his wife. So shout out to them. But it looked amazing. It sounded amazing. Hans Zimmer, his score is so damn good, dude. If you haven't heard it, man, it's like up there. It might be like top 3, top 5 from him. So I would definitely recommend it to anyone who has not, seen it in maybe a while or just has never seen it, period. Because it is a great, like, classic, big epic movie that we don't really get too many of anymore. So definitely check it out.
Yeah, I mean, that's one that it's been on my list basically since like this year. I finally watched Alien. I finally watched The Martian. So kind of like
Ridley Scott, yeah.
Ridley, like I watched the original Blade Runner. And also watched 2049, which I forgot to mention previously, but that's for a future podcast.
Yes.
But so kind of like getting some Ridley background. That I think it's logical that this would be a next in line whenever I pick that back up.
Yeah, man, for sure. It's kind of funny because my girlfriend and I, Reagan, we've been doing something similar because she hasn't seen a few of his movies. We watched Blade Runner last year at some point, and she really loves Blade Runner. But she hadn't seen Black Hawk Down. She hadn't seen The Martian. She hadn't seen Alien. She hadn't seen Gladiator. So we knocked all those out fairly recently, like all in the last month. So we were on a little bit of a tear, and she wasn't crazy about Alien, but she did really love The Martian and Black Hawk Down. And really appreciated that film and Gladiator. So
I know it's kind of like,
it's
kind of like sacrilege to not say Alien is the best, I feel like, but I'm with Reagan that The Martian is my favorite. I don't know if that tops Blade Runner for her, but Martian is my favorite that I've seen so far from him.
She just said that Black Hawk Down is in fact her favorite.
Oh, out of left field.
Have you seen Black Hawk Down?
I have not seen that either.
Oh, buddy. You're in for a treat.
Got to do some Ridley catch up.
Do it.
All right. Well, we've got enough on our slate today to get into before we can't just keep talking about old movies that we've seen. So let's get down into some news. Before we get into all of the Disney stuff, there's a Disney adjacent thing that we have to we can't not talk about it because some of it happened last week after we recorded, and even more, it seems to be happening day by day. And that is, of course, Spider-Man 3 and this just massive sprawling cast that is coming together. Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are supposedly, I don't know what's confirmed at this point, what's rumors, what's like there's been, okay, so Tobey and Andrew Garfield there was like some sightings at like a costume fitting or something like that.
Yeah.
That has sparked rumors, and just all the other occurrences have just added on to that. But that they would be returning as their Spider-Man iterations. Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane Watson, Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy. Confirmation, we know that Alfred Molina will be back as Doc Ock. We already know that Jamie Foxx is coming back as Electro. There have been rumors that Charlie Cox is going to be involved bringing back his Daredevil character. Plus today, this is the one where it just gets absolutely crazy. The fact that rumors today came out that Willem Dafoe will be returning as Norman Osborn, aka the Green Goblin, and Thomas Hayden Church as the Sandman. Two villains who were defeated and killed in their respective Spider-Man movies back with Tobey Maguire and the Sam Raimi trilogy. So all of this obviously is just, it's going to be Spider-Verse. We know that Doctor Strange is going to be involved, so he's going to open up the portals to alternate dimensions in some capacity. That's the only logical guess. But I think the fact that if that's true, that Green Goblin's going to be back and Sandman, like, are they literally going to make this almost like the animated Spider-Verse where it's, all right, let's go through this one more time. My name is Peter Parker. And it's like him fighting Norman Osborn, Toby fighting Willem Dafoe for like 3 seconds. Is that what he's coming back for? Because I can't imagine that they're back in any large capacity.
Yeah. Well, just real quick, because I have to correct this to make sure this is right in my own head. So Willem Dafoe's Norman Osborn did die. He died at the end of the first movie when he killed himself with no glider on accident. Thomas Hayden Church, he lived, right? Like he kind of, like he said bye, and like sorry, and then he floated away.
I mean, I don't know. I guess we didn't like get death confirmation.
But now also that you're mentioning the death and the living bit, Doc Ock did die. In his movie.
He floated to the bottom of the, like after the warehouse collapsed.
You're like drowned, yeah. So that I honestly I hadn't even thought about that when this news came out, because Alfred Molina, like that is a real like done deal. It's like been reported everywhere. So that is curious. Like I wonder how they're gonna explain that, or I guess maybe he's just in a different universe where he hasn't.
Yeah, it's like alternate dimension, and he's still the same actor playing the same person, but it's
weird.
A different dimension where he did not. He either has yet to become Doc Ock, or he is but hasn't died, or I don't know. It's gonna get crazy, and I think
I would just love to see the script for this.
Just like see the cast like on the opening page where they list out all the characters.
Like
and
what
actors.
This looks like on paper as far as like exposition, or like I guess maybe just explaining how this works, and like of course they're counting on the audience to understand or remember that these characters did exist previously. I mean, these are like pretty famous movies. I mean, all the Spider-Man movies are. But man, I know, I mean, it's also funny too, because as you said, some of these are rumors, some of them are, or have like very legit reporting and are essentially confirmed. But out of all these different ones, I mean, we're talking about, about 8 or 9 different potential casting, like bits of news. Only 2 of them are like 100% like done deal, like this is happening. So, and again, like that rumor we heard today is like, oh, they're kind of like in negotiations. They're like, oh, there's this rumor that Tobey Maguire is like holding out. And whether or not he's holding out for like financial reasons, or if he's holding out because he wants a certain type of role in the story or the script that he's like not getting. I think Grace Randolph mentioned something along those lines. I'm not saying that she's a valid source, but I'm saying what she was kind of implying was that, as you were saying, these roles can't possibly be that big. Because again, Tom Holland is Spider-Man. It is his movie, quote unquote. So
that's what I was going to ask you. Is that any concern at this point, if all of these turn out to be true, about Zendaya, about Tom Holland, about Jacob Batalon, I think is how you say his last name, about our core MCU Spider-Man characters?
Right.
We already know that Doctor Strange is going to be in there, so that's another one that's going to be taking away from like the heart of Spider-Man.
Right.
Are you worried that there's going to be not enough time to go around between all these characters?
Hell no, I'm not worried. Tom Holland's gonna be Spider-Man for the next 20 years. I think it's fine that we have like some epic multiverse mashup in this movie. I think maybe, again, we have no idea exactly what this story is, what the movie's actually gonna end up being. I'd be curious to know, did Sony initiate this idea after Spider-Verse was received so well? Did Marvel say, hey, in Endgame, we kind of showed these, alternate dimensions, things like that. Maybe we should go this route. Was it, a really collaborative thing? Was it one pushing more than the other? We really don't know, but I think, even the cast members so far, Tom Holland and what's his name? Jacob
Batalone, I think.
Batalone.
Whoever plays Ned.
They have the guy who plays Ned. But even those guys have talked on social media and teased fans saying, this script is so awesome, like they can't believe like what's in it, so it seems, at least in a public way, they're showing excitement. And I think Tom Holland, I think, is the same age as me, and I know, or like he's 24 maybe, but he's like, I think knowing that we have been alive at the same time and have seen watched the movies progress, I feel like if I was in his shoes and I had the chance to kind of team up with these older Spider-Man, or like see these older villains like come back, like I'd be like, oh hell yeah, like I'm game for that.
Yeah, like
that'd be like kind of like a dream come true type situation.
Right, it's like he's probably fanboying, like basically how Peter Parker does with Iron Man, with Doctor Strange, like with the Avengers, like that's what he's doing in real life with, I imagine, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. Like
they show up on set. Like I hope they get some really good like set pics of them hanging out and stuff like that, because
I saw one tweet that was like, if they don't announce this by doing the pointing at each other Spider-Man meme, then like this is all a waste.
What's it all for, really?
All right.
But yeah, that's kind of my final thing. My final thing on it really is that who the hell knows? We don't really know too much at this point, apart from Alfred Molina as Doc Ock and Jamie Foxx as Electro. I would love to see every single person we just talked about come back. I say the more the merrier, really just swing for the fences. Because at the very least, it'll be interesting. And I don't think, they've had a pretty good track record, and they showed with Into the Spider-Verse, Sony at least can handle that kind of story. So, hey, more power to them. My fingers crossed. I am super excited for it, even just on what we know so far. So I'm being optimistic, with some sort of caution as well.
Who cares about caution? I'm all in. We already got J. Jonah Jameson back, so
there you go.
I'm ready for it all now. But it's time to do all this Disney stuff. So for anyone who is just like not paying attention to any sort of news, because this literally was the news from like last Thursday on. So basically Disney held their annual Investors Day, which kind of took, like Johnny mentioned, took the place of like a DC fandom or a Comic-Con, or this was their virtual version of that. So typically it's just like updating investors like myself with my one Disney stock about the status of everything, but they turned it into this big event with a live stream and sizzle reels and all that. So they went through all of their properties, from like Hulu, FX, their new announcement of Star, which is an international addition to Disney Plus, like ABC, FX, all of these different properties on top of Disney Plus and Marvel and Lucasfilm and everything that they own. So it would take us, like I mentioned, 4 hours to go through, years to go through every single thing that was announced. So we've got this broken down. We're going Marvel, Star Wars, Pixar, and Disney Animation. And we're just going to run through everything basically with a little 1-sentence synopsis or so. And then Johnny and I are each going to pick one thing from each category that excites us the most. And we can really dive into that a little bit more just for the sake of time. If you really, really want it, just tweet at us and we'll do a 4-hour podcast where we go in depth on everything. But for now, this is what we're doing. So let's get it started. While we're talking superheroes, let's stick with Marvel. So one of the biggest things, we knew that basically they announced 10 new series for Disney Plus of Marvel and Star Wars. So of Marvel, we already knew about a bunch of those. But 3 new series were announced, which are Secret Invasions, which is a previously rumored series starring Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury. Ironheart, which stars Dominique Thorne as the genius inventor Riri Williams, who creates the most advanced suit of armor since Iron Man himself. and then Armor Wars, which is starring Don Cheadle as War Machine, James Rhodes, and he's facing Tony Stark's worst fear of what if this technology, what if these weapons fall into the wrong hands. So
Right.
those are three new series, and then we also got new looks at WandaVision, which is coming the soonest out of all of these. We got a full trailer for Loki, the series. We got a full trailer for Falcon and the Winter Soldier. A little tease of the animated series What If. We got, I don't even know if there was a look, if there was just like a sizzle reel for Miss Marvel. Plus news about She-Hulk, some casting confirmations there, and a hint that Daredevil might be involved. We got news that Haley Steinfeld is officially playing Kate Bishop in the Hawkeye series. They kind of just mentioned Moon Knight. And then Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special, which will be filmed ahead of, like, on the set of Guardians of the Galaxy 3 and released the holiday before that comes out in 2023. And then an animated short called I Am Groot. That's all on the TV Disney Plus front. And then, I promise I'm going to let you talk in a second, Johnny. We got some new movie announcements, which are Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, the third Ant-Man movie. You've got the core cast coming back there. Plus, they added Katherine Newton from the movie we just talked about recently, Freaky, as well as Big Little Lies. She's playing Cassie Lang, the grown-up version. John Watts will be directing the Fantastic Four movie. That's the director from the MCU Spider-Man movies. And then in regards to Black Panther 2, they confirmed they will not be recasting T'Challa, played by the late Chadwick Boseman. So that's really like the major points. But like I said, Johnny, what are you most excited about from all of that?
Oh, goodness gracious, Zach. That's a good question. Honestly, oh God. Okay, I will say the Loki show looks a lot more interesting than maybe I had given it credit for previously. I mean, I like Loki. I think everyone likes Loki. They like Tom Hiddleston as the character. It's cool to see him back after the events of Infinity War and Endgame. So I think that in particular really struck me, and they had a great trailer. Owen Wilson seems funny in his role, and it just, I think when you have Loki, there's just so many different possibilities as far as what the episodes can be about, where the story can go. Maybe potentially how that could tie into other stuff down the line. I know that this is like the Loki from the Avengers timeline that they went back to and tried to take the cube from, but maybe somehow he'll end up getting put back into the main continuity. Who knows? But I think again, that's the kind of the fun part of that, is just having a lot of possibilities, and I thought it was a fun, cool trailer they had. I didn't expect to get all that footage that we did. So yeah, I'll say Loki. I'd say after WandaVision, it's probably my second most anticipated of all the series they're doing. And I don't know. I guess Moon Knight is just a long ways away. I mean, I'm excited about that, especially.
And then the fact that there was no information about it makes it hard to get
confirm. Yeah, they didn't confirm Oscar Isaac. So maybe they're still in talks. Maybe they're still trying to sort things out on that front. But yeah, that's clearly a ways away. Falcon Winter Soldier, I think, looks really cool. But it is kind of, again, more the same, like fairly predictable. It's like the Winter Soldier. They're like hanging out and teaming up, and Captain America's dead. Now they're taking over. But everything else, I mean, it all looks pretty good. It's just varied degrees of excitement.
Yeah, well, this is actually going to make this one even shorter, because Loki is my choice as well. But I think that you kind of mentioned it, but just the fact that Loki dies at the beginning of Infinity War.
Right.
So that, like you said, this is the 2012 Loki.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's fun about this, is that it gives it kind of like free range, because we're in alternate dimensions. This isn't like affecting the current continuity, at least not that we know of initially. So they kind of like literally just have a blank slate to go and do whatever they want, to make it as weird as they want, as like out there. So that's something I was wondering, just the fact that Owen Wilson was in there and he looked almost as if he was in like a Howard Stark costume. So I was like, is this gonna, because we see that he's in the ATV, I think is what it's called, that which is the that's not right, the AVT maybe.
They're like this basically this bureau type.
It's the multi-dimension like police basically.
Yeah.
So there, as we know, he vanished into thin air, so into another dimension at the end of in the middle of Endgame. So that's really exciting to me. I think that they could get really weird with that. And I even saw one theory that was on, I think comicbook.com had posted it, that I don't know if you're familiar with the DB Cooper hijacking. I wasn't.
No, I did
until I read about it.
Well, yeah.
But it's literally like back in 1971, this man hijacked a plane, got his ransom or whatever, and then flew off in the plane and vanished.
Yeah, he perished.
And there was like one clip of Loki on a plane, and he was wearing the similar sunglasses to what like the police sketch of this guy turned out to be. And I was like, that's probably wrong and like just way too much fan speculation. But just like the idea of that alone, I was like, that's something that they could very well tackle in this, of like an explanation to like these urban legends, to these myths, to like all of these, like, oh, Loki did that, that's how that happened. And I think that's just like a fun idea to even like think about tackling.
Yeah, and I think that, again, that is what is most exciting. I think they can do a lot of fun things traveling, even through human history into the future, like alternate dimensions. But yeah, the DB Cooper thing, I didn't connect those dots when I saw the footage, but I thought that was a cool point that people were making. I think they're onto something. Again, he's wearing the same exact thing. He jumps out of the airplane and then gets what's the bridge called, the Asgardians
to Asgard.
Yeah, it like blasts him out of the air and away. And again,
the Bifrost
with DB Cooper, the money was never found. There was no parachute found. His body was never found. He was never seen again. So it, like, him literally disappearing in midair and going to back to either Asgard or another dimension makes perfect sense. And I think it'll be cool to see what other things they can come up with.
What if it's literally just like 6 episodes of like each one's a different urban legend, and it's like Loki did it. Yeah. That's Loki's the Bigfoot. Loki's the Loch Ness monster.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd be totally on board with that, but I do like it, the concept, I think, at least in theory. But yeah, so Loki, when does that release again? Is it early next year or later next year?
I think it's May 2021. So that means that it'll come. I can't remember if Falcon and the Winter Soldier is August. No, that's the old release date. So I don't remember when it got pushed to. March 19th, actually. So it'll go January. January's WandaVision, then Falcon and Winter Soldier in March. So basically right when that wraps up, it sounds like, and then Loki will be the third one.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, so
our year without Marvel is about to come to an end, and we're just going to get drowned in it.
Yeah, we're going to go from one extreme to the other, and I don't know how I feel about that, but it should be mostly good, I think.
Yeah, I'm with you there. But speaking of drowning in things, the next category here is Star Wars. And like I said, like Marvel, they're doing 10 Star Wars series. Obviously, right now we have one. We have The Mandalorian. And then I guess you have Star Wars, The Clone Wars, the animated series. But in regard to like the new Disney Plus type stuff, The Mandalorian is the big one. But before we get into the series, I mean, the biggest news and the most shocking news out of nowhere is the next film that's coming out. December 2023 will be Rogue Squadron, and it's directed by none other than Patty Jenkins of Wonder Woman fame. So I have a feeling that's going to be your pick here, so we don't need to go into it too deep right now. But just out of nowhere, we had like inklings of different movies. There had been the canceled Game of Thrones, the Benioff and Weiss trilogy, and then Rian Johnson's trilogy. Who knows if that's happening? But on the movie front, it was Rogue Squadron, and then Taika Waititi's movie that is still nameless, plotless. So we'll get into Rogue Squadron, I have a feeling. But 10 series, one of the biggest ones, Obi-Wan Kenobi, finally got like hardcore confirmation of it. Ewan McGregor's back as Obi-Wan. It's going to take place 10 years after the events of Revenge of the Sith. And Hayden Christensen is returning as Darth Vader. Also rumors that Tamara Morrison, who is Boba Fett, who has played Jango Fett and then is now playing Boba Fett, obviously with the clones. Like that's why they're the same actor. He's Boba Fett on Mandalorian, but he also is all of the clones. So there's rumors that he's going to be in this series as well, playing Captain Cody, who is Obi-Wan's like right-hand man as a clone trooper.
Okay.
But this time he's going to be flipped around on Anakin's side once Order 66 happens, and they're going to be hunting Obi-Wan. So that would be very cool. Tamara Morrison has the bag secured. He's about to be playing like 3 different characters in 3 different Star Wars series. So props to him. 2 other shows in the Mandalorian timeline, Rangers of the New Republic and Ahsoka. Rangers of the New Republic being sort of like it sounds almost like a police procedural, because we've seen the Rangers in this season of Mandalorian. I don't want to spoil anything since you haven't binged it yet, but
That's true.
just sort of like policing the galaxy after the fall of the original Empire. And then Ahsoka will be the Ahsoka Tano series starring Rosario Dawson. She's introduced this season in The Mandalorian, and that's probably, since they're all 3 happening at the same time, going to result in a big crossover event. There's Andor, the Cassian Andor Rogue One spinoff show. There's a new animated series spinning off of the Clone Wars, which is called The Bad Batch, based on a group of clone troopers. Star Wars Visions sounds very interesting. It's a series of animated short films that will be told via anime. So 10 fantastic visions. So it'll be a completely new look to like any sort of animated Star Wars story. An event series of Lando. So I don't really know what event series means, but we'll see what that does. No news on plot or casting there, but I don't know if it's going to be Billy D. Williams. Don't know if it's going to be Donald Glover. We'll have to wait and see.
Donald Glover.
Yeah, I mean, that obviously you'd have way more room to work with then, because Billy D. Williams, you'd literally have to pick up after Rise of Skywalker.
Well,
and I feel like they want to get away from that.
I agree. I did see a cool, it's a fan theory essentially. But an idea for the series that someone said was it could be Billy D. Williams. Either, I guess you could put it during the events or after the events of the sequel trilogy, but basically kind of narrating or talking about his past, and then have Donald Glover playing him during like certain like parts of his life, basically, which I think is pretty cool.
That would be a good way to blend them, because we know they worked together on Solo. When Donald Glover was there, he kind of worked as like a consultant for the character, him working with the character. But that's something that I don't know if event series is their way of saying mini series, and it's going to be like a one-off 6 episodes.
Yeah, I think it will be, which is fine.
And we know Donald Glover's a busy guy, so we can't have him wrapped up doing multiple seasons on Disney Plus. But 2 more series that they announced: The Acolyte, which will focus on the emergence of the dark side powers in the final days of the High Republic era, and then A Droid Story, which will be an animated television movie featuring a new character guided by R2-D2 and C-3PO.
Cute.
So, Johnny, of all of those, what strikes your interest? What are you most intrigued by?
Well, since you already told me what I'm supposed to be excited about, Zach,
I think I know you. You know, it's that co-host relationship.
I will say, I mean, again, on the movie front, it's this. I mean, Taika Waititi, which we knew about. We don't know anything about the project other than he's involved and he's co-writing it with a woman who also co-wrote 1917. He's going to be directing it. But this, I mean, bomb drop at the end. I mean, you can't avoid talking about Patty Jenkins. Loved the first Wonder Woman. Really excited about 1984. And she posted this. It was funny. I was obviously keeping up with the presentation. And I got this notification from Patty Jenkins, and I clicked on it while they were still talking about Star Wars, and they hadn't announced Rogue Squadron yet. But it took me to the video, and it's like 2 minutes long, and I was like, huh, okay. I kind of like skimmed through it real quick, and I didn't see anything, like nothing stood out. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to go back to keeping up with the Disney presentation. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh yeah, Patty Jenkins is directing this movie. And then of course I realized after the fact that that was her announcing it, and she was wearing the helmet and gearing up. So that was cool. I thought it was a really cool way of announcing it. It was a huge surprise. Really excited for her. She's big into like aviation, and she like has a lot of respect for like fighter pilots and things like that. So I think having that very personal, perspective on it is going to be interesting. We've never seen a Star Wars film or any, not a Star Wars, even like a series to my knowledge that's focused on pilots. So I think that's going to be really cool. And I believe this is also it said a new generation of fighters and pilots. I think this could be taking place after the sequel trilogy. I
don't know entirely what the timeline is there. I know that they've said, Bob Iger had said that he wants this project to be more accessible to like general audiences rather than, okay, I have to know the entire Skywalker saga. And it seems to be, it's just going to be like, they had the game Star Wars Squadrons. I didn't play it, but it came out either earlier this year or maybe late last year. And it seems to just be like almost similar to Rogue One, kind of like the in the trenches type of like battle movie. Like it seems like that's what it's going to be going for versus like some sprawling narrative or anything like that.
And I'm all for that. I mean, I think that sounds really cool. It's 3 years away, and Patty Jenkins, I'm sure, has probably already had some thoughts about it and is already developing a little bit, but that she'll really jump into that after Wonder Woman comes out, and she can totally move on from that. I assume she'll come back for a third movie after she does this. I think, if nothing else, this will be a nice way creatively to get her into a different like headspace, and then she can kind of come back fresh to Wonder Woman. But yeah, I mean, I think it's gonna be really cool. I'll be curious to see, I think she has the aim of putting together some really amazing, dogfighting sequences. But it's gonna be interesting because, of course, with like something like Dunkirk, they were able to go get these real airplanes from World War II, and they were able to take them out.
You mean they can't go get real X-Wings?
They were able to take them out like over the ocean and like, strap IMAX cameras to them and fly them around. With this, I assume it's going to be, on a soundstage, and they're going to have to put them in like this big model, and they're going to have to like kind of swing them around. Maybe they'll use the digital, the big LED screens to kind of recreate, certain perspectives or like certain skies or things like that. Also, is this going to be totally like space battles, or is it going to take place, are they going to be flying over different planets, things like that? So there's a lot of ways they could go with it, but I think that in general, I really like this premise, and it was a really, really jaw-dropping kind of surprise at the end
and it sounds, one thing that's interesting here, like just from what we know about it in that Bob Iger quote, this sounds like it could potentially be like completely removed from Jedi and the Force and lightsabers and all of that, which is exciting. Like Rogue One nearly was that, with the exception of like there was some mysticism and then the Darth Vader ending. But that, I mean, I think that's something that people have begged for a long time, of being like, let's see the Star Wars universe outside of the Skywalker family. Like, this is a sprawling galaxy with tons of planets. What else is happening here outside of like, and that Mandalorian's done a nice job of that, of like, okay, here's the Outer Rim. Here are all these other planets that are like completely unaffected by the Empire and the fallout of that. So I think that's something that's just waiting to be explored even more.
Yeah, totally agree. So, and again, I mean, I try to keep up with these series as much as I can, but I'm more movie oriented. So I'm excited, especially, I mean, she's been praising IMAX so much. She shot, she used IMAX film cameras to do Wonder Woman 1984. So hopefully, this will be a big, return to the Star Wars world on the big screen, 4 years removed from Rise of Skywalker. And I think that in itself is exciting, if nothing else. And Patty Jenkins, of course, is the real kicker, I think.
So as much as that interests me, and I'm certainly excited about that, I mean, people should know that a bigger Star Wars guy than you in general, so I'm excited by a lot of this. I think the easy pick for me here, this is me like cheating the rules here to talk about two things. The easy pick would be to go with Obi-Wan Kenobi with that series.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the big news there is the Hayden Christensen returning as Darth Vader. So people kind of didn't know what this was going to be about with you. We knew Ewan McGregor was coming back. We didn't know when it would be in the timeline between the events of Revenge of the Sith and old Ben Kenobi in the original Star Wars. But we have concrete timeline. We have 10 years after. And now this seems like it's going to be, it's called Obi-Wan Kenobi, but it's going to be him and Darth Vader. We're going to get plenty of some of the Darth Vader's castle, the stuff on Mustafar, some of that may have tied into the Rise of Skywalker, or just like that was hinted at there but never really explored. And that this is going to be, we're almost guaranteed that there's going to be some sort of clash between them again, which is very exciting. And I know like Revenge of the Sith is kind of like the cult fate. I don't know if it's like cult, but like of the prequels that are like shit on a lot, that's like kind of the one that people like stand by quite strongly.
You really clamor, yeah.
So that's exciting, but I'm gonna throw a curveball here, and I'm actually gonna go with the Acolyte, which sounds very, very interesting to me. That's the show that's going to focus on the emergence of the dark side powers in the final days of the High Republic era. So that's something that we've known about, that's been alluded to, that the High Republic, that was when the Galactic Republic and the Jedi were at their peak. This is ahead of the prequels. So like the Jedi are kind of like not on the run, but they're like on the downfall. They've lost a step. The Sith have sort of developed, and obviously Palpatine is like laying his plot out at that time. So
yeah,
this is kind of going to be the origins of that. You know, we've heard about the Sith and their rule of two, and how like all of the different Darths were able to kind of develop this. But I mean, there's like Darth Sidious, Darth Plagueis, Darth Vader, like all of those. So who knows how far back this is going to go in between, I guess, the High Republic, which is another thing that they've, a couple of months ago, I guess last year maybe, they announced like the whole High Republic book series and everything, like what's going to be, that's kind of their focus, non-TV and film, that they're like coming out with adult books, with children books, like exploring that timeline. So that might weave together a bit here of kind of like, okay, that's what it was like at the peak, and now this is what it's going to be like sort of as these dark presences begin to come together. So I think that could be, if they take that, just like the exploration of the dark side of the Force is something that's super intriguing, and you haven't really gotten too much of, because like the originals were kind of like light and fun but very good, and then like the prequels were all about like Anakin and his temptation, but we haven't really seen, outside of like the video games or like non-canon type stuff, just like in depth, like this is like killing people and being bad, you know.
Yeah, I think well, you mentioned it too as far as the timeline goes. I think this is an interesting period. I know the High Republic is, you know, prior to the prequels, prior to the Skywalker like saga, you know, a couple hundred years maybe. So maybe we will see someone like Darth Plagueis show up, or another Sith Lord. Because as you said, I mean, the Jedi are, you know, this is the Jedi and their prime. Like they're kicking ass. Bad guys are on the run. There's like no Sith really to speak of. So I think this could be a darker, more intense show where, you know, they bring out some of those darker characters, and really do something that in an era, of course, that we haven't seen before. And I think
I think we've always heard like that Jedis are like protectors of the peace, like that they're not soldiers as we have seen them basically like in battle, that they're just kind of like guardians of the peace. And so that's what they were during the High Republic, supposedly. So it's like that coming up against a rising force of darkness. And
I will say, I don't know if anyone else has really looked into this, or I haven't seen anyone mention on Twitter or anything, but I don't know, for those unfamiliar, the definition of an acolyte is a follower or a disciple. So potentially this show might be following someone that is a disciple of a
The
Sith Lord.
acolyte.
A disciple of like a Sith Lord, a follower of Sith that is, trying to help them, or maybe trying to become, strong with the dark side. Again, I think that this is a cool, darker show, and again, out of everything that was announced, especially on the show side of things, this I think is the most enticing, honestly.
Now that you've pointed that out, I hadn't even thought about that definition wise, but I tweeted that they're really keeping it simple because, after Rogue One, a Star Wars story, like they could not figure out how to name the spinoffs, and these are no episodes, and now it's like The Mandalorian, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Andor,
Right,
the Acolyte, Lando. They're like, this is the person's name, and that is the name of the series. That's
the show
it.
now.
So they're just keeping it simple.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting. I don't know. Can't remember if they set a time frame for when this show could potentially come out. I would think 2022, maybe 2023. Seems a bit ways down the line, but who could they cast in this? Who could they get to write and direct? I know there's one woman already attached who has plenty of experience, but I'll be curious. Maybe the name of the show could even potentially change or something like that. But for now, The Acolyte sounds pretty enticing, pretty intense.
All right, well, let's flip from that darkness to some light stuff, and that's Pixar. We're only halfway through this stuff, but we should probably be able to get through Pixar and Disney animation relatively quickly because they did not have the depth of everything.
No,
but so we already know Soul coming out this Christmas. Then we have June 2021, Luca, which is a celebration of the friendship between a boy named Luca and his best friend Alberto during their unforgettable summer. So that's coming out in 2021. And then in 2022, they announced two films that are coming. One is called Turning Red, directed by Domi Shi, who was the award-winning director of Bao, the short from what movie was that ahead of? Coco? What came after Coco?
Might have been Coco.
Anyways, from that Domi Shi of Bao. But that Turning Red follows a character named May as she experiences the awkwardness of being a teenager with an added twist. When she gets too excited, she transforms into a giant red panda. So that's coming out March 11th, 2022. And then Lightyear, the definitive origin story of the hero that inspired the toy. So this is not a Buzz Lightyear prequel. This is, to clarify, when they made Toy Story, Buzz Lightyear was supposed to be an action figure based off of an existing movie. Like that's who he was supposed to be, like the hot toy. So this is that movie. Right. This is the movie of the character Buzz Lightyear that made him famous. So Chris Evans is voicing the young Buzz Lightyear on his journey to becoming the most famous space ranger ever. And that's coming July 2022. And then also they announced the first ever long-form animated Pixar series called Win or Lose, coming to Disney Plus in February 2023, which follows a middle school softball team in the week leading up to their championship game, but each episode is told from the perspective of a different character. So of these six, what are you most intrigued by?
Okay, so I got to hit on just a couple of things real quick. Okay, so Bao came with The Incredibles 2, which was in summer 2018. Also, Luca, is this secretly like queer cinema in disguise, potentially?
It's basically Call Me By Your Name, right?
Call Me By Your Name, right? I think that could be really interesting. We'll see what happens with that. But I think out of all these, I will say the Turning Red is very cute. I love, the giant red pandas are adorable. But the Win or Lose, I think, for me, that just really struck me during the presentation. Of course, it is the first ever.
Hold on. Actually, I forgot to mention this detail about Luca, is that they have this wonderful summer, these two boys, but there's a deeply held secret, and it is not their sexuality. It's the fact that they are sea monsters from another world just below the water's surface. So that's a twist.
Cricket. Well, Pixar, swing and a miss. But that sounds like it could be fine. But I will say, win or lose, I think it is the first series from Pixar, so I think getting to see them in that medium is going to be interesting.
But that just does not sound interesting.
Well, I totally disagree. I think I love the story behind how they came up with this concept.
Right, of like the meeting and having different perspectives about the same events.
Yeah, so they go to a meeting on Toy Story 4, and they were like, they come out of it, and one of them is like, wow, that like, this is so great. Like, I'm really excited. And the other one's like, oh, that was terrible. Like, this is just so bad. Like, this is going to be miserable. And I just think, I mean, this is literally years away. It's about 2 years away. So they have a lot of time to develop it. I think that bodes well. But I just think, I don't know, a middle school co-ed softball team. I think there's a lot of different, personalities you can get in there. I'm kind of thinking like almost like Inside Out, like seeing that like kind of like early teen almost, and just having like a dozen of those like bouncing around together and bouncing off each other, and have the jokes that you can make from different perspectives of the same exact things leading up to a big championship game. I just think that could be really fun. I think it could be you could teach a lot of lessons in that kind of story. And these other movies, I mean, these movies seem really fun. They seem great. I'm glad to see, original films like Luca and Turning Red. And even, for a spin-off type movie, I think Lightyear is a fun concept. But I do think this series, I think, could be really quite cool.
Well, I would probably say, I mean, I agree with that. I think the medium, like you said, is interesting. And I'm sure Pixar rarely has any misses. So, I mean, I feel like with this being the first of that they're not going to just roll something like half-assed out there. So I have faith in that. I mean, Lightyear is very exciting. We all know Buzz Lightyear from Toy Story, and that Toy Story 4. Toy Story 3 was the conclusion. Then they pushed it to 4. And then it seemed like, okay, could they carry – Woody is done. Could they carry this off with just Buzz? So this is like a way to kind of do that without sort of running the well dry of the Toy Story franchise.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
But I'd say Turning Red is just like super intriguing. I loved Bao. I remember just being like blown away by that. So I'm excited to see that. And it's just something incredibly weird that like only Pixar could do. I feel like that, okay, like my first thought was like Big Mouth, which is obviously complete opposite, but like middle school awkwardness, anxiety, being a teenager. Obviously you wouldn't have like nearly the same dialogue or jokes or anything like that. But then they're like, let's just make her a giant red panda. Like, just let's throw that in there.
Yeah.
So that's something that's just like so uniquely Pixar. I feel like that most places you would hear that and you'd be like, what the heck? Like, this makes no sense at all. Why would anyone have that connection?
Yeah.
But now like, it's like, oh, it's Pixar. Great. Yeah, I'm in.
Yeah, and I thought the key art for this was adorable. The character looks so cute. I can't wait to get a plush at some point.
Get that Funko Pop.
But yeah, I think you're onto something again. That awkward, that early teen phase, and Inside Out's my favorite Pixar movie. And something adjacent to that, kind of in the same vein, is something to be excited about again with an original film from a director who's already shown promise, because I think a lot of people loved that Bao short and thought that was pretty brilliant.
Yeah, I'm with you there. But last Disney Investors Day piece here, Disney Animation, which of course separate from Pixar. This is your Moanas, your Frozens, your Tangleds. But first piece of news was that Raya and the Last Dragon, which is coming soon in March 5th, 2021, will be opting to go the HBO Max route, as in debuting simultaneously on Disney Plus and in theaters. But unlike Soul, Premiere Access is back, $29.99 to get this bad boy, just like Mulan. So we'll see what happens by that point, if theaters are opening or if people are willing to pay the price there. Encanto, another movie, takes you to Colombia, where a magical family lives in a magical home. It's got new songs from Lin-Manuel Miranda, and it's slated for theaters November 2021. So this sounds like another musical. Obviously, Lin-Manuel Miranda from Hamilton. He did the music for Moana, In the Heights, Mary Poppins. Like, he's kind of just all over with. In the Heights was Warner Brothers, but still, he's had a healthier working relationship with Disney. So that's, I guess, just another avenue for him. And then some Walt Disney Animation Studios TV series. We've got Baymax from Big Hero 6, Zootopia Plus, which I don't know what the plus stands for, Tiana from The Princess and the Frog, and Moana the series, as well as Iwaju, which will be produced in collaboration with the Pan-African comic book entertainment company Kugali. So an exciting amount of like shows coming as well for Disney Plus. So again, for the last time, Johnny, which of those has you the most excited?
It's got to be Iwaju by a large margin. I mean, the art that they showed looks incredible. I'm a sucker for sci-fi. Everyone knows that at this point. So that having that piece to it already kind of grabbed me. But seeing that art, hearing that the themes are going to be tackling, or things of like class and challenging the status quo. I think that this just has a lot of potential. I love seeing that there are African artists involved with the writing and the artwork, the animation. It looks just so stunning. I mean, I'm looking at the art right now.
Right. I want to I don't want to make a lazy comparison, but I feel like it's very Wakanda and like the vibes of like the future. It's like the futuristic and meets African culture.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an easy comparison to make. I mean, Wakanda has been around, especially in the comics forever. So I'd have to ask them. Don't want to make any assumptions, but I'm sure that was at least some sort of influence. I mean, because that is an inspiring, property, and just that, I think that ideal of Wakanda, being this untouched, uncolonized piece of Africa that was allowed to develop and flourish and maintain its culture, I think is a really powerful idea on its own. But and this, I think, they can tell a very interesting story. It's not superhero. It's not it's not Black Panther. It's not superhero. It's just this society and this what this world's going to look like, and they can really build it from the ground up to be whatever they want it to be. I think that is just super exciting, and getting those kind of voices in the door, and Disney doing that groundwork to make that happen is important as well. So I think just seeing that happen with them working with Kugali, I think that's just really awesome. So props to them on that one.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that as well. But I mean, if I had to pick one, I don't really know what to expect from this, but I like the idea of it, and that's the Moana the series, which like I loved the movie Moana back in 2016, loved everything about it. I'm interested to see. I assume that I don't even want to attempt Aoli. I can't do it. That Aoli Cravalho would be back to voice Moana. I don't know. I mean, we know how busy The Rock is. Like, who knows if Maui's going to be a big part of this or what? But I just get kind of the ideas. Did you ever watch like the Lilo and Stitch series? Because we know, I'm pretty sure there's a Moana 2 coming. So like we know there will be another movie. But like, I loved the Lilo and Stitch series, and that was kind of just like one-off adventures, different experiment, like all that kind of stuff. That was like obviously a Disney Channel show. This is different being on Disney Plus, but the kind of like idea of that is very appealing to me. I mean, I know I'm not like a little kid anymore, but I still have that interest just because of how much I loved Moana, that I think that could be a fun to explore this in a different avenue of a series versus like a movie.
Yeah. No, I mean, I loved Moana, the film. But yeah, it is interesting to think about, could The Rock be involved at all? Could he show up for an episode? Could he, be in, could they actually tie him down to do a whole like season or something like that? But I think the animation at the very least will be stunning. I think that was one of the best parts about Moana, and seeing that Pacific Islander culture brought to life, and getting more of that. I'd say out of the other series that weren't Kawaju that I already said I'm most excited about, that might be the one I'm most excited about on top of what you've already said. Zootopia Plus, I think. I'm a sucker for Zootopia. Absolutely love that movie.
Agreed.
So getting to dive back into that world is very enticing as well. But no, Moana, and great film. I'm curious. Did they mention anything about the music? Is that going to be something they're going to try to?
I just read that this will be a musical series for Moana.
Okay. So that's good news as far as I'm concerned.
Right. Same here. I mean, if they've got Lin-Manuel Miranda in the bag for another movie, they're like, why not write a couple new songs for it too? So I'm sure they'll work that out.
Absolutely.
So
I mean, overall though, I thought it was a really great presentation.
What's your one? I know we've done individuals from each category. What's your one biggest from everything?
Damn, you really got me now, haven't you? Man. I mean, I'm really excited about Thor. As far as like everything that's upcoming Disney, I would say
right. And the news there was Christian Bale as the villain.
Finally confirmed, yeah. And I love Christian Bale. I mean, he's a fantastic actor. I think it'll be cool to see him as a villain. Whether or not they do him with like mocap or they make him into a human, because in the comics he's an alien. So I'll be curious to see if they go the kind of the Thanos route, or if they decide to just make him a person so they can do makeup or something like that. But I do have an affinity for the MCU at this point, I think, over Star Wars, especially because the Disney Star Wars side hasn't been that great. But I mean, I've always been a fan of the animation side as well. So I just think, one thing, but Thor, I would say, I guess. I think all the stuff that they're doing with the new phase after Endgame is exciting. I think they're making a lot of smart decisions. What would be your number one?
It's hard. There was so much, it's just like, I feel like the collective, like all of it, I mean, that's not my answer. I'll come up with something, but like just the excitement of it all being like, wow, this is like so much stuff to look forward to. Like I'm planning my calendar now for the next like 4 years of Disney content, but which is like kind of overwhelming, but also very exciting. Like we've said multiple times after this just year of disappointment, but
right.
If I had to pick, I guess the Acolyte. Like that's, I mean, I would lean Star Wars. I would lean Star Wars over Marvel, and I think there might be like an individual of the Marvel projects of like what's coming. There might be something that's maybe more exciting, but I would say that of the news that everything that was announced, like they were going through this thing and Marvel was being saved for last. And we were all talking back and forth and we're like, oh my goodness, they must have something huge. Like the way that they're announcing everything else, there's got to be something like groundbreaking. Like they're going to bring all the Spider-Man out here right now or something.
Yeah.
And then there was kind of like the Marvel stuff was good, but there was nothing that was like as big in relation to Marvel as there was for the other categories.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with the Acolyte and Star Wars.
That's a good one. I mean, I'm really excited for that as well. I think to your point, you're right that it did feel a tad underwhelming. I think Marvel fans, we're just spoiled. They're very competent over there with Kevin Feige. They have everything we have already known that they're doing in the wake of Endgame sounds fantastic on the show side and on the film side. Star Wars, on the other hand, I think they had a lot more to prove. I think they had to do a lot more to get people excited because The Rise of Skywalker was such a disaster. So I think they made a lot of smart moves. They revealed a lot of really exciting things. They have a good variety of projects in the works. And even just on the film side, coming off The Rise of Skywalker and that sequel trilogy, Rogue Squadron sounds like a great way to reset and go back to theaters, go back to the big screen with a director who is more than capable, loves, the medium can do stuff with IMAX. It has proven experience with blockbusters. You know, is the first woman to ever direct a Star Wars movie. That's just a really big get, and I'd say quite. I mean, the highlight of the show, I would say, with just the magnitude of it being an announcement.
Yeah, I get that. I definitely get that. Well, if you remember, we actually have a movie to review on this episode as well. Should we get down to that?
Absolutely.
You sound great.
Yeah, right.
What? You told me you weren't feeling it? You were in it.
We don't need to put them all out.
I know, but we just need to film.
Your hearing is deteriorating rapidly.
We'll come back. Till then, Lou, we just keep going, okay?
No.
Lou,
No.
let's play tomorrow. Let's see what it's like, okay? I'm gonna be like a click track. You can play to me.
You have to understand, your first responsibility is to preserve the hearing you have.
I can't hear you. Do you understand me? I can't. I'm deaf. I'm deaf.
All right. So we are talking The Sound of Metal. That is, like I mentioned off the top about 3 hours ago, a new movie on Amazon Prime. It came out at the beginning of December. So hopefully you've had a chance to check it out by now. It's by director Darius Martyr. Serious, I would say under the radar awards contender though. Like, this is something that I guess within like film circles, it's getting its proper respect.
Yeah.
But general public wise, like I feel like this movie is not as well known as some of the other ones that are expected to be contending.
Yeah, I mean it's a much lower key film. Amazon has really good production. I think that they've been, putting some good things out last few years. They don't get the hype that Netflix does, especially on the awards side of things, or the respect that maybe like A24 gets. With their awards contender projects that they do, or even just their non-awards contender projects that are really people go crazy for, like Uncut Gems or Midsommar or something like that. But this, I think, is a serious, Riz Ahmed, Paul, is it Racy? Is that how you pronounce it?
I don't know. I don't know, but I was going with Rossi.
I'm going to say
sure,
Rossi because it just sounds better. But and Olivia, I mean, those first two, especially Ahmed and Rossi, I think they deliver like two of the absolute best performances in the entire year. And I think the reception so far has been really strong. Even you said outside of film circles, doesn't seem like a lot of people have been, latching onto it maybe as much as we would have hoped. But as far as the actual reception, like, metric wise, Rotten Tomatoes 97% from critics, 89% from audience, which is really good, especially for a movie like this that is, it takes its time.
Low-key,
It's
slow
not,
burn kind of movie.
yeah, it's not a big bombastic movie. It's, and I think even I might have had that preconception going into it. I was like, okay, there's gonna be a lot of, some cool drum stuff, maybe some Whiplash vibes or something like that. But no, I mean, this was a like character study. I mean, it was like getting into the nitty gritty of this person who was experiencing this, massive change in their life that was really like kind of turning their world upside down. So I was just stunned. I mean, I had pretty high expectations. Wasn't expecting a masterpiece or anything, but I mean, I thought it was really amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. I saw this after you, I think, so you kind of hyped it up a little bit more. But I was very impressed by it. I also didn't really know what to expect. I mean, I knew what to expect, but like you're saying, like I didn't know if there was going to be like hardcore rock scenes or if it was going to be like almost like A Star Is Born, kind of, obviously not to that extent musically, but just like I wasn't expecting it to be such an intimate, such a personal, like you said, character study of Riz's character, Ruben, and like how he is dealing with this life-altering change and just like how sudden it happens. And the juxtaposition of, not even just juxtaposition, but like, because they worked well together, of like comparing the loss of hearing with like his life as an addict, and how like he's like addicted to being able to like hear, like that he's willing to go to the same lengths of like whatever it takes to like get his fix or to get back his hearing, even if as he comes to learn like at this facility that's not what the goal is, but that's still what his intention is. But I mean, that's getting a little into the weeds with the plot that I'm sure we'll touch on a little more, but I loved it. I gave this an 82 out of 100. So not quite as high. Did you say your score?
Yeah, a 90 out of 100. So I gave it 4.5 out of 5 on Letterboxd. I really did think it was amazing. But yeah, I think I did like it a tad bit more than you did.
Yeah, but then that's not that I didn't like it. I liked it quite a bit. It's definitely in my top 10. I'll have to analyze my lineup to see.
Now I've seen less films than you though, but it's certainly up there. Yeah,
the great movie all around. So we'll get into it a little bit more in depth here. If you haven't been able to tell so far, quick, very simple plot synopsis, one-liner. A drummer's life gets turned upside down when he suddenly loses his hearing. So that puts it simply. Basically, so Riz Ahmed is playing a character named Ruben. He's a drummer. He's part of a two-person band with his girlfriend Lou, played by Olivia Cook. And they're just like this metal, almost like screamo type band where he's just rocking out on the drums as loud as possible, and she's kind of wailing into the microphone. But all of a sudden, his ears just start ringing, and like that, he loses his hearing. It fades within, like, I don't know the official timeline, I don't think, in the movie, but like within a couple days, like it's nearly completely gone. Oh, and man. It's just imagining how like terrifying that would be. Like they've been not living off the land, but sort of they're just kind of in the trailer, moving from gig to gig, making ends meet that way. So it's not like they're like well off for him to just be, okay, let's go get these implants. Let's go get this doctor's appointment. Let's check out what's wrong with my ears. So they kind of have to come to grips with it. And what ends up happening is that Lou leaves him at it's almost like a halfway house for recovering addicts who are also struggling, who are also going deaf or learning how to live without hearing. And so there he kind of like he has to like try to find a way to reckon with this like anger and frustration about the situation that he's found himself in, but also like try to come to grips with it and learn how to live with it and put away his desire to regain his hearing, but instead learn how to move forward as he is. So it's kind of like two like opposing viewpoints there that he has to figure out which one he wants to align himself with and how he's going to move forward. And that puts him up against Paul Rassi's character, Joe, who runs the facility. He's been deaf for years. He's an expert lip reader, and he's very much at peace with his loss of hearing, and he's trying to impose that same level of serenity on the other people at the house. So it's just a great back and forth between them, great solo by each of them as well. Like just a powerhouse of performances.
Oh man. Yeah, and I think that story, that line you read about the plot, the single line, like that in its own makes sense. Like that's a compelling concept, right? And again, that's pretty much all I knew going into the movie. But what I think really elevates this film is it's kind of twofold. There's the matter of addiction. So Ruben was an addict. And then once he and Lou got together, they got clean together. And, he's been staying steady and they're working and they're, they're working on their art and they're, trying to make, ends meet. But when he's put in this position, it is like he is an addict trying to get like a fix or like trying to get money to get his hearing back. Cause he, it's like he is so dedicated to what he's doing, what he's been working toward as far as his music and his music with not only his personal craft, but then what that means for his relationship with Lou, So there's that, and then I think the other added bit of conflict that I found really compelling and moving in a lot of ways was between him and Joe, Paul Rossi, where he is trying to tell and explain to Ruben that, you know, getting your hearing back is not necessarily the solution that you think it is or that you want it to be. And kind of coming to terms with deafness and finding the serenity in it, but also the strength in it, and what that can mean for, you know, your relationships and people that you can work with and mentor. I just did not expect that to be in this movie, and I thought, like, wow. I thought that made, certainly for some of the best scenes in the movie, I'd say maybe one of the best scenes of the entire year, where Ruben and Joe sit down. We're in spoiler territory, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So Ruben, after doing really well at this, this house where he's been working with everyone and kind of, learning to sign and learning to mentor kids and things like that, he's been cut off from the outside world. But then he realizes, Lou is still out there. She's over in France and she's doing, these shows without him. And so he kind of gets desperate, and it's like, someone needs to get their fix, like right now, they need to go out and make this thing happen. So he sells all the stuff that was in their camper they were driving, their instruments, and he actually ends up, essentially trying to pawn the camper, and getting money for that. And then he goes and gets his implants to try and hear again. But when he gets back to the house and Joe confronts him, they sit down at this table, and it just is like, it's just them sitting there at this table. And it's like one of the most compelling and like, white knuckle scenes of the entire year of them talking, because Joe's heart is broken over the situation. And he's trying to reason with Lou, or not Lou, but Ruben. And he's also trying to, eventually he knows what he has to do. He has to tell Ruben he has to leave, even though he doesn't want him to. And Ruben is kind of accepting that and kind of acting like, well, he doesn't need to be there, or that's not where he wants to be. But at the same time, you can kind of feel the inner conflict, where, he has been benefiting from being there, and he knows that he has been making these connections, but he's willing to walk away from that, for better or for worse.
Right. And I think, like, beyond just the performances, one of the ways that makes this so impactful is the use of sound, like, throughout the movie. Like, they really put you in Ruben's position. Like, the way that they kind of spend chunks of time at either minimal sound and like faded, like basically like you're trying to like pop your ears. Like when he initially at first starts to happen, it's kind of like startling. Like, I mean, it really, you feel the same amount of like fear that he feels. They do a nice job of kind of translating that to the audience. And then throughout, like, as it continues to fade and going back and forth between like full audio and then no sound. And then, like you mentioned, when he gets that procedure, and it's even more heartbreaking, is that like he'd been waiting for this and hoping for this and saving up for it. And then even then it's like, it's not better. It's like significant. I would almost say that it seems significantly worse. And he tries to convince himself that it's not, because he just did spend so much money on it. But like the crackling of the implants, the audio, like it's not worth it. And you see that at the party at the end and everything. And that's just even more like, by making you fully aware of what he's hearing, it just makes it even more like heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, man, that scene, I mean, what did you expect when he went to get them activated?
I mean, I thought it was going to work. Like, I obviously admittedly don't know anything about the science of hearing aids or implants or anything like that. So I don't know I had no idea like what the success rate was or what to expect going in. But thought that he was going to like get back to normal and then like maybe go down some self-destructive path with other vices, like going back to his old ways or something, versus kind of having, like I said, having that barely audible crackle, staticky noise that
Right.
ultimately forces him to take them off and just accept the silence after spending $40,000 to get the surgery.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know what to expect. I mean, of course, I've never had implants like that before. I've never been in contact with someone who has, or I don't know anything about that. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely shocking and like upsetting because, I mean, he was so hell bent on getting it done and thinking that it was going to solve all his problems. And I think that was what Joe was trying to get him to realize. And I think that was what made this scene, in retrospect, because he doesn't get him activated until after the scene where he gets kicked out and has the conversation with Joe. And I think you realize even then that might have been part of what Joe is like so broken up about, is because he knew that Ruben wasn't going to get the solution
Happiness that he was hoping for. Yeah.
what he was trying to find. So yeah, but I mean, just the sound for this movie, man, I really don't know how anyone, and we don't know how it's going to pan out. I mean, the Oscars are months away, all the different guilds and awards and whatnot. But I don't know. I don't understand how anyone can watch all, like, I don't care if you watch 50 movies, 100 movies that have come out in 2020, whatever. I don't see how you could pick any other movie as having the best sound design this year.
This is one of those ones similar to, like, I know you aren't crazy about it, but A Quiet Place, like, where it's so integral to the story itself, like to the success of the film, that if that was executed poorly, like this movie would have been 50% as impactful.
And I think even I'm not crazy about A Quiet Place, but even then, I mean, A Quiet Place has impressive sound design, of course. But this is, whereas that is trying to remove so much sound to pure silence, or highlighting only certain little elements in an entire environment or an entire world because of the circumstances of that story. This is like so personalized and so interior for Ruben. I mean, I've never in any movie seen like deafness recreated to this extent before. And I think it's also one of those examples where, I mean, sound design is important for films. A lot of people do respect it and notice it when it is done well. But I think this is one of those prime examples of why I love movies so much, and why, like, the work done here is so specific to the medium. Like, this can't be replicated in another like art form. And I think that is, of course, worth celebrating and worth recognizing and awarding. So I don't care about Tenet or Mank or whatever these other movies are out there that people have been praising. I'm talking about the sound. Of course, Tenet has been talked about a lot. I think that it will be an absolute crime, like, if this doesn't win the Oscar for best sound. Of course, the Oscars aren't the end all be all, but it's like, I mean, it's so impressive. And I had heard so much about it prior to watching the movie, as I'm sure you had. I was still blown away and still like very impressed and like shocked by what they managed to do. And I think that kind of all ties up to the finale of the movie, the conclusion, where, during his time at the house, he was talking to Joe, and Joe was trying to get him to, really focus and sit down and like find your inner peace, take a moment and come. I think it's a matter of also not only just coming to terms with his deafness, but also being present, like in his life, period, not, deafness or not. And so, it had been mentioned earlier, he was forced to like sit in this room. And I don't know if this made you laugh or not, but the very first time he goes into the room, and it's like 5 in the morning, and Joe has like coffee, and there's like a donut. It's like a plain donut, and it's on the table. and Ruben
Just
just
smushes it.
like literally like smashes it into nothing on the table like with his fist, and he just has so much trouble with that task that he's told to do like throughout his like stay. And then at the very end, it's like there's this party and things are really awkward, and his hearing is just so uncomfortable. He's listening to his girlfriend sing at the birthday party for her father, and they're in Paris, and Lou's singing, and then things are weird between them. It's not really clear if their relationship is going to succeed or not. And then he goes out on this walk, and he's going around, walk around Paris, and he sits down on this bench, and there's just all this noise, and it's like a cacophony. And again, this isn't just normal noise. It is like distorted and rough, and it's in his head, and it's just so interior. And then he just takes him out. He just takes out like the little pieces on the implants, and he can't hear anything. And he's just sitting there, and it's just dead silence. And he's looking around, and he's looking at the clock tower where the bell was ringing, and the kids across the street playing, and the sun's beating down on him. And it was just so powerful. Like, he was sitting there, and he was really like present and like at peace in that moment. And then it just ended. I was like, wow, that was just like the perfect ending. And I didn't even, it was, even though that it had been set up earlier in the film and kind of that point had been underscored so well, it hadn't even entered my mind until it like cut to black. And I was like, okay, wow, that was like perfect. Like,
Right.
Like I didn't need to see anything else. We don't necessarily know what's going to happen, like with his career or his life or like their relationship, but like he was comfortable at that point. And I thought that was like a really strong like message to like go out with.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. But before we close out, as the awards expert, as the awards radar author, I don't want to, if you're planning on writing one up, I don't want to spoil anything, but you've touched on sound design, you've touched on some performances. What is your forecast here for the hopeful, the chances of Sound of Metal?
I think this is tough because I know,
like you said, Amazon's had a good track record. I mean,
they have
for all the way back in Manchester by the Sea. They had Big Sig.
Yeah,
they had
Cold War.
Yeah,
which got a like awesome best director and best cinematography double nom. It's just, man, I would love to see this movie get like a best picture nomination or like a best director nomination. I don't really see that happening just because it is a film that it doesn't have like broader social like messages, I guess you could say. Something like Nomadland or Trial of Chicago 7, things like that. Those are strong contenders because they tell, very broad but also like timely stories. I think where this movie has its best chances are, of course, with Riz Ahmed in the lead role. I think his performance is like fantastic, like absolutely one of the best of the year. I want to say I'd be shocked, but also I know the Academy, so it's tough to say, but I think he absolutely deserves a nom. I think he'll get one. Paul Rossi, he is less, likely, I think, just because he is a smaller name, of course, by comparison. But I mean, his performance is really, really powerful, and it is like a classic, like, it's not like a lead role that they just throw into supporting. It's like a true blue, like, lead, like supporting, where he's in a few scenes, like key scenes, and he gives like a really strong performance. And then I think the sound, of course, will absolutely get a nomination. I don't think there's any question of that as far as I'm concerned. I just think for the win, it's going to come down, I think, probably to that and Mank, just because Mank did like, David Fincher and his crew spent so much time like making it sound like an old movie, and they added like scratches to the music, and they used old instruments and recorder devices and things like that, which is cool, and I think that's interesting. But I definitely didn't think it had the same impact or the same wow factor that this did. So I think it's going to be its strongest chances are in sound and best actor, and then best supporting actor. Maybe it can get those 3 noms. I hope it does. I would love to see it, pop up, Best Picture, Best Director, something like that. But I think those are far cries as far as I'm concerned.
I'm with you. I hope it happens. Excellent movie. One of the best of the year. 82 from myself, 90 from Johnny. If you haven't seen it on Amazon Prime, we would definitely recommend checking it out. It's a good one if you can't tell. So thank you all for listening. Thank you for this lengthy episode, tuning in for all of the Disney updates, for our review of The Sound of Metal. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. We couldn't do it without you. And, we're happy to sit here and talk about everything. Follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, TikTok, give us a like on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can catch all of the podcast episodes in their entirety. And you can find all those accounts at Inside Film Room.
And don't forget to vote in our final four of the holiday movie bracket, because like we said, that will determine what comes next. But while you're on social media, while you're in the mood to click some buttons, go ahead and subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon, Google, Spreaker. Well, I don't know. There's so many. We're on all of them. Wherever you get your podcasts, we are there. And come back next week for the holiday-themed episode, whatever it ends up being, whether it's Klaus, whether it's Home Alone, Harry Potter, or The Grinch. We'll see. But we'll be here. Hope you are too. We'll see you next time.